time, I'd like to call to order the May 9th, 2007 Zoning Commission meeting. Let the record show all commissioners are present. This time, we'll open up the floor for the public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda item that is not up for public hearing, please come up, sign with the secretary, and you will get your 3 minutes to speak. Okay, no one wishing to speak. Item 4, acceptance of the minutes of the April 11th, 2007 meeting.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion to approve by Steve Barrow, seconded by Alan Kraus.
I'm going to abstain.
Is there any opposition or discussion? I have one abstention, Mike Bardwell. Motion passes. Item 5, public hearing to consider the following rezoning requests. Zoning Review ID 1708.07, tract LJG for Daystar Investment.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Brown. I'm here representing Daystar Investments to present our request to rezone from conservation to business park. It originally was submitted for industrial, and we made a revision for a business park. And the commission is very familiar with this particular property, 107 acres. So I'd like to just briefly give a site location update. The conceptual plan of the business park. 3 critical issues which we consider paramount to this property with respect to its current zoning, and that is rezoning to meet the parish needs, rezone to match the surrounding properties, and impact of additional residential development. This property is located east of Highway 73, north of Highway 30, approximately a little less than a mile from Highway 30, west of I-10, and the current zoning is conservation. There's the entrance to this subject property is on Highway 73. With respect to major industry, this property is very close proximity to industrial zone areas along Highway 30. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. I just really wanted to show the proximity to the major industries. Here's an aerial view of the subject property highlighted in green, the 107 acres in question. As I mentioned earlier, this property, as you are aware, is completely surrounded by business parks currently zoned. The concept plan of the business park, this is basic concept at this point. That we hope to meet all the site requirements for a business park, but to develop 3 to 5 acre tracts per lot. Also with possibly 5 to 10 acre tracts per lot. Of course, this is a preliminary, or this is not a preliminary plot map. That would have to actually be approved at a later date. Rezone to meet parish needs, one of the critical issues in impacting the current zoning. Of course, we are aware that the need to attract new industries. Industrial development needed to support the current infrastructure. Additional housing would threaten current conditions. In other words, we feel that through public opinion and all the things that were said here today about increasing in density, I should say, threatens the current infrastructure of this particular area. The need for additional tax revenue to improve infrastructure. 47% of the tax revenue comes from retail sales. Secondary, light industrial markets needed to support growing petrochemical industry, ethanol plants, and liquid bulk storage biomass plants. And we also feel that this subject property is located in an active light industrial area, more feasible to rezone subject property to match current conditions. Additional impact to the current zoning is what we feel is the spot zoning of this current property, current zoning. Subject property is currently surrounded by business parks, zoning, negative impact to residential development, lessens economic value, less attractive to potential buyers. Parish concerns with residential encroachment on industry buffers, transition zones, And of course, as I've heard here tonight over and over, public opinion on additional residential development is not favorable, i.e. outcome of Spanish Moss, which is adjacent to our property. Thirdly, impact of additional residential development is a concern. The infrastructure, additional residential development will overwhelm current strained infrastructure, negatively impacting educational funding with increased deficit spending, increased traffic congestion along Highway 73 and Highway 30 if we continue with residential development, impact public safety with increased traffic patterns near industrial traffic. We have one single entrance, and that's located on Highway 73, closer to the end of Highway 30. We feel that that would be a concern as well. In closing, Daystar Investment seeks to meet the needs of the parish through obtaining appropriate zoning which represents best economic use of land without impacting economic value of surrounding land. And we seek your favorable consideration in recommending rezoning to a business park. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from commissioners?
Can you state one more time, why did you originally apply for industrial?
Oversight, just administrative oversight on the terms. And I had clarification and also the current zoning of surrounding property.
Got a quick question for staff. Included in our packet was some minutes from a November 2003 meeting. And it looks like at that point there was a rezoning request to go from business park to conservation, and that request was denied. What was the count? Do we know what the council's?
The council approved it.
Okay, so the council went against the wishes of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I mean, the Zoning Commission, and approved it. So that's where it sits today.
It actually went further than that.
Okay, give me a little more history on that.
You're the only one, so.
Yeah. The commission denied the rezoning request. The council approved it. The parish president vetoed it. The parish council held a special meeting and overrode the parish president's veto. In fact, I think it was one of the last acts of the old council. And at that time, right, the developer at that time proposed a subdivision here. If I remember correctly, it got preliminary approval. The development was sold. Whoever he sold the development to didn't pursue it. It lost its preliminary approval. It was looked at as far as an earlier smart growth proposal, and it's just been sitting ever since. It's kind of funny that I was in a conversation with someone out at the plant, and we were talking about business park and the need for the businesses in this parish that would support industry and would offer the products and services to, and not just it, but other commercial type businesses that would require this stuff. So I'm kind of glad to see something happen with it for a change. But that's the basic rundown on the history of what. I'm glad I can be around to give some information from time to time.
Yeah, maybe a vote every once in a while.
So in the same way, this schematic here that we're given that is proposed may not necessarily ever be implemented in, but what we're doing here is a zoning change. We would open it up to various other options that would fit under the business park zoning, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Basically, what we would be a recommendation to rezone it would put it back to where it originally was in 2003, creating a usable buffer between industry and residential. Yeah.
So the zoning for industrial doesn't mean.
That's where the change up. They are not going for industrial. They have changed to business park, which is what it was originally. That's which is on your revised agenda. Well, yeah, right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Then at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come up and address the commission on this property, please come up, sign with the secretary, and you'll get your 3 minutes. And no one wishing to speak. Comments, questions from commissioners? What's the wish of the commission?
I think basically
This was advertised as industrial, but since business park is a less intensive use, I think the motion needs to be to grant it as business park as amended here, because it was advertised as industrial in the paper, but it's okay because it's a less intensive use. I think I'm comfortable with allowing it to be. If you decide to recommend it, it's okay.
You just want us to specify the business park rather than
business
industrial.
park because it was advertised as industrial.
Okay. The commissioners understand if you are whether you make whether the motion is to approve or deny, please specify the 2 types of zoning, to and from. What is the wish of the commission?
Mr. Chair, I think your eloquent explanation about providing a buffer to residential from industrial with a business park district is a very sound explanation, and I'm going to move for approval from the conservation to the business park district in lieu of the advertised district for that reason.
I have a motion to approve by Julio Dumas.
I'll second that.
Second by Scott Courtwright. Is there any objection or discussion? Motion passes. And this is just a recommendation. This does go to the full council. So you still got a little further to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 6, public hearing to consider a neighborhood business overlay. 6A, zoning review ID 1658.07 for Excel. Mr. Wiley.
Good evening. I'm Joe Wiley. I work for Excel, and Bronco Fabrication Services is one of our companies. This matter came before you in a slightly different fashion a couple of months ago in March. We have an industrial pipe fabrication facility on Swamp Road. We provide fabrication services for local industry and industry throughout primarily the Southeast. We do a lot of welding at that location and take joints of pipe and convert them into spools that are then installed in various petrochemical and refinery processes. About a year ago, the owners of Excel purchased Bronco Construction Company, which had a small pipe fabrication division, and they were located in Livingston Parish. Excel is located in Prairieville on Airline Highway. The owner of Excel, Dave Roberts, made a decision that with Excel being in the Ascension Parish venue, he preferred to have the pipe fabrication facility that Bronco was operating in Livingston move to Ascension Parish. And so we began looking for property at that time. In fact, he had been looking for property at the time he was thinking about acquiring Bronco. At the time, there was a Cowboy steel yard that had operated for many years. There had been a steel yard there for a long time, and we converted that facility to a pipe fabrication facility. In the process, we've taken a rather large metal shop building. It's been upgraded. We have a relatively small administrative office space. I don't know the exact dimensions, but I'm going to guess it's about 2,000 square feet. In August of last year, I believe it was a month, we obtained authorization to install a single-wide office trailer. Briefly, I want to tell you that right now, the demand for pipe fabrication throughout the country and arguably in the world is at an all-time high. There are just numerous major expansions of refineries and petrochemical facilities all over our market area, which is predominantly the Southeast and the Caribbean. And we're at a real ramped up stage in terms of the number of welders that we have and the number of support and administrative personnel that we have for those welders. Now, the welders, of course, are in the shop operating the machines, but we have to have supervision, quality control personnel, safety personnel, accounting, and other administrative support. As a result of this heightened demand for pipe and our heavy workforce at that site, we have additional needs in the short term for administrative space. The office trailer that was approved back in August has 2 offices, and in the middle it has a restroom and some filing storage areas. So we have 2 offices in that trailer. Both offices have 2 people in them, and they're just little small, probably 8 by 10 offices. And the main office, the permanent office I described a minute ago, that's about 2,000 square feet, all those offices have either 2 or 3 people in those. We're not sure yet from a company strategy and long-range plan whether we want to undergo the cost of a permanent expansion to the existing block building at this time. It could be that in 12, 18, 24 months, the pipe demand could conceivably drop. That's a crystal ball that we don't have at this time. But what we do have today is an urgent need for office space at that site. Even if our long-range plan for that facility called for us to add additional permanent structures, you well know that if we started that process 2 months ago, we'd still probably be 6 or 8 months away from a completed facility when you take into consideration the various steps that go into the beginning of the job to the time you get beneficial occupancy. The last time we made a request in March, it was couched primarily in terms of allowing us to put this double-wide trailer, if I can use that term, as a permanent addition to the facility. That caused some concern for many of you on the board. We've looked at our requirements and your concerns, and we've tried to strike what we think is a reasonable compromise that would allow for us to take the existing trailer off the property, replace it with a double-wide trailer that's already there being stored because we own it. It was at our Prairieville airline location, and allow us to leave the double-wide trailer in place for 18 months. We feel that's enough time for us to get a better grip on our market, on our demand, on our workforce, and what we want to do at that particular site on Swamp Road in the long term. So that's the significant difference in what we did in March and what we're doing tonight. It's exactly the same trailer. It's exactly the same location. I know that Mr. Johnson explained to you, and most of you may remember, that this trailer site, the actual physical location where we want to place it, is actually behind the existing permanent facility. And from most points on Swamp Road, you really can't even see this trailer back there. The way that we're going to situate it, the extra width is actually going to go to the more or less the depth of the property. We also intentionally positioned these, the first trailer and then this replacement trailer, if you'll approve it, on the northern side of the property, which is adjacent to the Ready Arc commercial facility. So there's no residences up there. They store welding machines and other equipment that's used in light industrial applications. We think this is a very innocuous addition in terms of aesthetics. It's not something that's really well seen from the highway. We do have an urgent need for it, and that's why we're willing to see if you would entertain a revision to the initial request where we would have authorization to install this trailer for a period of 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from commissioners?
Joe, you said the double wide is exactly behind the main office, but in the first sketch here behind the letter, it's a little offset. Can you clarify that for me a bit?
If you don't mind, I have some photographs that were taken of the existing facility. Can I share those with you?
Sure. You can put them on the screen. It's kind of fancy.
How's that? Getting there. You'll note this picture here is a view from basically the rear of the trailer away from Swamp Road. The picture at the bottom left is from really close to the shop, and you can see on the left side is the block building that's our permanent administrative building. And then this picture on the lower right is taken basically from the parking lot standing next to Swamp Road looking to the rear. So it's really camouflaged, if you will, behind the existing building and not particularly in view. Now you can see in this lower left photograph the property behind us that I referred to earlier is owned by Ready Arc, our neighbor to the north. And you can see that that's just their equivalent yard, pretty much like we have, that they use for storing equipment.
Is this trailer set up for handicap?
It will be. We have to install it in accordance with the ADA rules, and we have our current trailer set up that way too. Mr. Grant, you can see in the top right here that we have a ramped access to the office trailer.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes, sir.
just for point of clarification, Ready Arc is here.
Yes, sir. Up where the 428.06 dimension is.
What's over here?
Behind us is a railroad track.
Okay.
I've got a question, or just a point of clarification on the ordinance. Was the company aware of the business overlay district in that area when they purchased that property?
I would say there's a good chance the company was not totally aware of the ramifications of the business overlay district. We were aware, and that was another issue that came before this board a number of months ago. I want to say August. The issue about the grandfathering and the use of the facility by Cowboy. So we were aware that there were some zoning issues, and we were aware, at least our contention was, and we ultimately prevailed on that issue, that it had been in continuous use, and therefore we would be grandfathered in as a similar operation compared to what Cowboy was doing. But the business overlay, all the details and ramifications of that, I have to say we probably weren't aware of it.
That's the position that we find ourselves in at this point in time. There was another business across from Swamp Road that came before us, and they're in the process of building a new building. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I don't want to sit up here and hamper business in the parish either.
Thank you.
Temporary. That's a tough word to stomach. What kind of guarantee do we have that if we should decide to do it, what's our guarantee that 18 months that XL is going to do what they need to do, either build the building or move the trailer out?
Well, I thought that if you approved the request, that it would be for a specific term. And at the end of that term, if Bronco XL had not complied with what we see as basically a contract with the parish, that contract could be enforced. But it would certainly be our intention to honor the contract and do what we need to do, whether it's construct additional facilities, relocate our personnel, the administrative personnel, to another off-site facility. There's various options that we could entertain at that time, but the best option for us right now is to utilize an existing resource that was at our other facility and just swap it out for the existing trailer that's there.
That's all I've got for now.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? At this time, I want to open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come up and address the commission on this item, please come up, sign in with the secretary, and you will get your 3 minutes to speak.
I'm Sherry Slyman. My husband and I own the property adjacent to the XL Bronco fabrication facility. I wasn't going to say anything tonight just because I know you've heard it all before 3 times, or at least twice. But I do want to point out a couple of things. The Board of Adjustments would call this a self-imposed hardship. When they came before the Board of Adjustments, they already knew they had contracts for a lot of work, and yet they came to this facility anyway. And then in, I believe it was December or January, they bought the property. So they knew what they were getting into. So I don't believe that they were not aware of the business park overlay. Mr. Wiley came to our house, the Slyman household, after the Board of Adjustments meeting. And we appreciated that, but one thing he said to us that really stuck in my mind was, why did we think anything was going to change? And I told him progress, and progress is what we're seeing at the roofing company down the street. They're building a very large, nice facility, and we did have a lot of problems with that business because they used to unload roofing materials on Swamp Road, which caused a lot of traffic problems, but they don't do that anymore. They have moved beyond that. They're not in their building yet, but they are putting and storing materials in their building. So progress is changing Swamp Road. When we went before the Board of Adjustments, there was what could be considered a loophole in the law that allowed Bronco to get into that facility. And at that time, the Board of Adjustments held us, the residents of Swamp Road, to the letter of the law. They said, this is what it says, and this is what we have to do because this is what it says. And I am going to ask you to do the same thing. This is what the ordinance says. Buildings should be made out of certain materials. It doesn't say anything about trailers, temporary or otherwise. And Mr. Bardwell's question about what's the guarantee that it's going to be pulled out of there in 18 months, we all know there are no zoning police. There's no one that's going to go over there and knock on the door unless the residents create a stink and bring it up and, you know, and cause problems.
30
no
seconds.
one's going to do anything. That's all I have, really. I just want to say again, I'm going to ask you to deny this because the ordinance does not support it. It is directly against the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Jim? Oh. All right. Jeff, allow rebuttal.
May I respond briefly?
Yes.
I wasn't aware there weren't zoning police, but we do know that there's limited resources to monitor what happens in the parish other than the neighbors that get upset about improvements and progress in terms of business. One option we had was in the dark of night to go take the double wide and swap it out for the single wide. And if there's not zoning police, what could you do about it? We're here in good faith to do the process the right way, to ask you to entertain the idea that we're in an urgent situation. I would speculate that if this particular request to substitute a double wide trailer for a single wide trailer on a basic fabrication yard was any place other than the neighboring property of a commission member, this would be a no-brainer. And it causes us at Excel and Bronco, as corporate citizens and as residents, many of us of the parish, a great deal of consternation that a sitting board member who happens to be our neighbor would basically make this a personal issue in terms of not even looking at the merits of the situation. It's obvious that this is not an adverse impact to the property in any way. There's no aesthetic diminution. There's no degradation in value. It's really just a simple, normally a no-brainer. We're just asking you to consider the fact that we're citizens too. And we have the ability to help the parish in many ways. We have the ability to take our fab shop and go someplace else. Mr. Roberts could have kept it in Livingston Parish, but he wanted to bring it here. That takes a little bit of cooperation amongst our political leaders and boards like yourselves. In a perfect world, yeah, we'd have scoped all this out. We'd have known everything about business overlays. We'd have had a 5-year plan. We'd have had all the money borrowed from the banks, and everything would have been perfect. I don't know what she's talking about us having contracts, because we didn't start welding in that property until June or July, and we didn't start getting any significant work until late last year. But the reality of our situation is there is a tremendous demand for pipe fabrication services. All of our competitors are completely tapped out for sometimes weeks and months ahead of time. They don't have shop space to do welding. We're just asking you to cooperate with us, help us, and in turn, we'll do every time we can our best opportunity to help you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions from commissioners?
Mr. Wiley.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that Excel would be prepared to, I mean, I don't know what the cost of removing that double wide would be 18 months from now, but would it be possible to post a removal bond with Ascension Parish that they would hold, you know, to cover the cost of removing the trailer in the event you fail to remove it?
Well, I'm going to say yes and no. My immediate answer, speaking on behalf of the company, would be, yeah, sure, we'll do that. If that's what it would take to get the majority of you commissioners to agree to do this for us, we'd do that. The no part of my answer is, why should we be held up to that kind of commitment or standard when your very rule says that we can only have it there for 18 months? I know that you have attorneys. You have access to legal recourse if we don't honor our commitment to do what we say we're going to do. So that part of me says, you know, well, no, we shouldn't have to do that, because that's just a more onerous requirement on us when we know that it's required of us to cease and desist after 18 months. So if that is a condition of the commission to approve this for us, we'll certainly honor it.
I'm going to defer to staff and see if that's even a possibility.
Well, I don't think that's, from my standpoint, and I can't answer for everyone else, but from my standpoint, if you grant them an 18-month period to have that there's a temporary building, we're going to set it up with the day they bring they have to buy the permit to move the structure and set it up, and 18 months from the day that's effective, I'm going to send Richard Throckmorton or whoever else we've got who are actually employed to do that, to go out and take a look at it, and if it's still there, then we will begin whatever proceedings we need to do to make sure that it moves. They are big, you know, they're well-known corporate citizens. I don't think there's a whole lot of, they're not going to get in a big fight over a trailer at that point.
Well, I'm kind of confused right now. I guess because I'm kind of getting mixed signals here. Because one minute we're talking about all the work that's going on, but then we're talking about you don't know what business you've got. Your competitors are getting tapped out. That's leading me to believe that you've got the businesses there. So I'm kind of confused. Why are we even discussing 18 months? It seems to me that if all this business is out there, then that should give you a little bit better sights on what you need and what you've got, and so I'm kind of going back to the permanent building aspect of it.
Well, I can tell you that in terms of my own experience in fabrication, which is pretty significant. You know, right now we're on upcycling and everything's wide open, but that may not be the case 18, 24 months out.
At the same time, though, there's still other jobs. There's still other work. It doesn't go down to completely anything. And I've had a little experience with that too. If you get out there and you're on the ball, you still pick up the little work. You still pick up enough to keep some of you. I'm not going to say you're going to keep everybody. If you end up having 50 welders, and you may drop down to 25 or 30 or whatever, but you still are going to have work. There's still going to be the need for that permanent building. It doesn't just go away.
Well, the difference, Michael, is that the overhead, the administrative aspect of the work we do would also decrease. So if we cut our welding force in half, instead of having 2 quality control personnel, we have 1 or maybe 1 part-time. You can just imagine that as the welding workforce ramps up, we have more administrative overhead associated with that. As it throttles back, then the need for even 4 offices may drop. Because we just don't have the associated staff that's necessary to support the welders.
And I do understand that. I'm just you're kind of bouncing back and forth on me. And I'm still looking at the deal with 18 months. And
I have a observation. How long have we been doing this debate about the size of the trailer, single wide, double wide? Have you guys put some effort into looking at a permanent structure? I think over the 3 months or whatever that you guys could have put some effort in that, and we wouldn't have to be talking about 18 months.
Well, we actually did do some preliminary work in terms of pricing and really just an internal scoping study on what size facility would be needed and generally, what it would cost to do it.
Okay.
We haven't initiated any design effort at this point.
This property is in the neighborhood overlay district, right? And whether you guys were aware of that or not, the rules still apply,
we
right?
know that.
I mean, you're a lawyer, right? You should know.
We understand
regardless,
that very well.
the rules apply, and the rules are not any different this time than they were 2 months ago when we denied the same exact property with a different presenter. So explain to me what's different from 2 months ago.
All right. Well, maybe I wasn't clear earlier, but the first effort was geared more towards a permanent approval. In other words, asking that you give approval
right.
permanently.
So the 18 months is the difference.
And now we're reducing it. I thought I took great pains to say that we're here trying to reach a compromise position.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? At this time, what is the wish of the commission?
Well, I had an issue with a mobile unit before. I mean, it just didn't comply with the ordinance, but I don't have an issue with a temporary facility just to get you over the hump. And 18 months is I consider it reasonable. It's going to be in the same location, just going to be slightly bigger than what you got today. So I'm going to recommend approval with a condition that it must be removed no later than 18 months from the day it receives the certificate of occupancy.
I have a motion to approve with condition by Julio Dumas. Do I have a second?
I will second it. And I will because I know you say 18 months.
Yes.
12 months from now, you're going to know. You got to know. Because it would take you 6 months to build a building. So even though we're saying 18, he's saying 18 months, it will be off of that site. So 1 year from now, we're going to know what your decision is. If you're a good businessman, and I would think that you are, or
yes, sir.
Your owner is.
The only thing I would add to that, Mr. Krause, is that the other option besides building a permanent addition at that facility is to either relocate to another area.
Well, no. Okay. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
You'll have made that decision 1 year from now. I'm confident.
I think you're right, yes, sir.
Just at a point of clarification, are you suggesting that maybe we ask that he come back and give us a status report?
I'm not asking, no. No, I'm not. We'll be able to find out.
Well, for what it's worth, and I'm just waiting, but during the course of this time, I'm gonna tell you, I don't want to hear crying about, oh, we've got run into this problem, we've run into that problem. We've gotten through the problems. Okay. The next thing I want to hear is the trailer's coming off. We got a permanent building. Okay, that's what I want to hear, because this issue is done. Is there any objection or discussion?
I object.
I object.
I have two objections. Steve Barrow, Paige Becknell. Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 7, public hearing to consider definition, single-family residential. Mr. Sigler.
Mr. Parrington has prepared two very similar definitions of a single-family dwelling. You'll notice that the difference in the two is that one has an enforcement clause and one of them does not. It's this particular member of staff's belief that one with an enforcement clause, of course, is superior to the other. But we'll leave that up to your discretion.
Basically, we have one that's got enforcement, the other one doesn't.
Right. One is simply a definition. And the other, as a part of the definition, it contains the enforcement because it gives us the way to prove up whether or not that is, in fact, they are living, in fact, in compliance with the ordinance, with the spirit of the ordinance.
Comments or questions from Mr. Sigler?
More along the lines of a question to O'Neill. O'Neill, can you elaborate on putting clauses such as the authority and stuff in the definition versus not putting it?
It's not consistent with the code. That's what y'all directed me to do it the other way, but it's not consistent with our code. Enforcement is not part of our definitions.
Right.
And that's why I drafted it two ways. One, because, I mean, I understand y'all directed me to do it one way. The problem is when I went back and reviewed our development code, we don't, it's a definition. It should be under the definition portion of the ordinance and not, I mean, you put enforcement someplace else. You don't put enforcement in definitions. At least that's how this code is drafted. And be inconsistent with the rest of the code to do it that way. If you look at all the definitions, none of them, I went back and looked.
In the definition.
You know, because to make sure it was consistent with the rest of the development code.
Well, this may be, I guess it is, it's gonna be a separate issue, but everything seems to come up with enforcement, but we don't seem to have anybody doing enforcement. Now, at some point in time, either the commission needs to get involved with enforcement, and we need to, or something has to happen.
We have one full-time enforcement officer now who is doing a substantial amount of work, primarily on substandard buildings, and soon on, once that's passed, on junk vehicles and that type of thing. And, you know, the argument can be made that perhaps we need more.
But that's not a planning and zoning commission issue.
No.
Well, there again, O'Neill, it's what we always run into, and we get kicked in the teeth every time because of it.
Well, Michael, that's the way the law is written. You have one provision, and that's what you do.
And I understand that, but it still goes back to the same old thing. We keep running into this same brick wall, but we can't seem to get any kind of relief for it. Now, I understand that's the way the law is written, but you know as well as I do, it kind of gets old after a while. You keep hearing the same thing. You keep running into the same problem over and over again. Now, I understand we're looking for a definition, and you have provided us with what we requested of you.
No, I did two. I did one with what I was told to do, and one which is consistent with the code. It doesn't matter to me which way you do it. It's just not consistent with our development code.
You've provided us with what we requested you to do. You went above and beyond in providing us two separate definitions to choose from. Okay, I understand that, but.
What's the definition of a single culinary facility?
I don't know. Y'all gave me a definition to use. I drafted an ordinance. Even with that, I went to the International Development Code, which was provided to me by staff, which defines dwellings. And it defines a single dwelling as a detached dwelling unit with kitchen and sleeping facility designed for occupancy by one family. That's how they define a single family dwelling.
Right.
I just have an issue with the term single in front of culinary. There's a lot of homes, including my own, where I have an external kitchen that's much nicer than the internal kitchen.
Then we can refer to it as a primary, because you could have a primary and a secondary culinary.
What to say that on the definition?
I mean,
I just want to be clear, that's all. This is a definition that's going to go in the code, and staff is going to have to live by it. And I can see someone showing up with a set of plans with a pool house and a big fancy outdoor kitchen facility, and they're going to say, nope, got to be single kitchen.
We could give you a variance, Julio.
I'm talking about my house. I'm talking about
in general.
I'll agree with Julio on that. I mean, I want to make sure, and I thought we went through this in the meeting, and we were going to get this ironed out, because there's a lot of people in this parish that have outdoor kitchens.
Yeah, we talked about
we had talked about that on the indoor versus outdoor, and I had thought we'd come to the agreement that we weren't going to speak to indoor or outdoor. Maybe I'm confused, but we had discussed that.
That's why I'm wondering why it's coming up now.
We definitely discussed it.
Yeah, we did.
I think Ron is right. We decided not to
I forgot exactly why it was, but there was a reason we didn't, and I've forgotten what it was now.
Well, we didn't clarify it, but the point is I think you either need to.
The problem was where do you draw the line on? You could have, well, in my case, you would have one inside the house and you would have one out in the garage. But on top of that, I might also have something out by the pool. So then we get into three.
Well, let's go ahead. I mean, but at the same time, you can go ahead and you can get so detailed and so confusing and confounding. A barbecue pit by the pool, somebody could try and argue that as a culinary facility. Where do you stop? Where do you draw the line?
That's my question.
So then that kind of goes back to primary versus secondary. You have in your home, you have a kitchen, a culinary facility. Now, I don't believe, the average person does not have two full-blown kitchens necessarily set up in their house. They have one area that they do the primary amount of cooking for the family. They have a secondary area where they would, quote-unquote, entertain.
Why don't you
Entertain
take out
type
the number?
cooking.
Just take out singular.
Yeah, you could really just take out single. Say with culinary facilities or a residence of not more than 4 persons.
Okay, let's talk about another issue. Is the single-family dwelling unit attached or detached?
Could be row houses.
This definition doesn't address that. In my mind, the definition of a single-family home is a detached house sitting on a fee simple lot. This is defining to me what the occupancy that's allowed in a single-family home is.
O'Neill, what was your definition again? Read it again. Sounded good to me. Huh?
Well, which
The
one
one
are
out
you
of-
talking?
The one out of the
International
book, international book.
The one I read out of the International Building Code, is that the one you were talking about? It said, dwelling, single family, a detached dwelling unit with kitchen and sleeping facilities designed for occupancy by one family.
I think at the end of that, you define what the one family is and call it a day.
Well, I don't know how you can define a family today.
Okay, well, define it the way you define it here.
Come back.
Okay,
I'll live with you.
you've got a situation. This is happening today. You have grandparents raising grandchildren. Now, are they raising one grandchild, two grandchildren, three grandchildren? You don't know. But you have that taking place today. Though, so you come up with a number. What's the number that you would come up with that you think is a reasonable, fair number that would fit everybody? No more than 5, no more than 6? What's the number?
What this says is designed for one family, and that's why it's called a single-family dwelling. It's designed for one family.
Define the number of a family.
It says designed for one family.
There again, though, if someone wants to argue,
I don't think
so I don't know.
I think we're going way too. Yeah, I mean, how far do you go?
Stop the madness.
Somebody finds a
Our
loophole.
blood
No, but we're talking about
related.
a residence not more than 4 persons. I'm in violation. I have my mother
No,
and 3 children.
but it says if they're related by blood, marriage, or that's not. It's 4 people if they're not related by blood, marriage, or legal adoption, right?
Okay,
O'Neill.
Right.
okay.
Right.
So if
right.
they're related, like this, grandparents to grandchildren, etc., it doesn't matter. This is like deja vu. We've had the same discussion like 3 meetings in a row.
We're back to the same thing. We're
And there's no
defining
answer.
occupancy.
There is
We're
no
not
answer. You're always going to be able to come up with a hypothetical of what's not.
Well, the truth is we have nothing now.
Yeah.
So
Right.
anything is an improvement. Take out the word single. Let's have culinary. Or call it kitchen. Because some people may
There's
not know.
2 places in there that you have to pull it out.
Right. I see.
Yes.
I would also add the word detached in front of residence on the first.
I think that's
We're going
too much.
We're going too far, Julio.
Too much. I'm ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to open the public hearing.
Okay, sorry. I'm ready to sleep.
As much as I would like to get along with it and go to the motion, I still have to open the public hearing.
Open.
Roll.
Well, this time I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the commission on this issue, please come up and you will sign in with the secretary and you will get your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, all. My name is Harold McGee. I reside in Prairieville, president of Merrill Properties. Among other things, we develop single-family residential homes for lease here in Ascension Parish. The 2 definitions that you have in front of you, I believe the staff considered a number of single-family definitions from a number of parishes in South Louisiana, and they all basically define single family as it's defined in these proposals, which is, I'm not mistaken, was mirrored to the East Baton Rouge parish definition of single family residence, which was recently amended by that parish metro council. The single family culinary was meant to avoid, historically, in my experience, what was commonly referred to the mother-in-law cottage, a detached apartment built in the backyard with a kitchen, a bath, and a bedroom facility. That's what it was intended to prohibit. It was not intended to prevent barbecue pits and a smokehouse and a jambalaya pot. Okay? We need this enforcement provision in this definition, one way or the other, either in this definition or in a separate ordinance, because what we are doing it's not really an enforcement provision. It's a testament provision that if a violation occurs, it's impossible for the neighbor or the homeowner association to verify that it exists, because in the civil litigation of the issue, the plaintiff has to prove the case that there's more than one family. And if the occupants of the single-family residence are immigrants, and more so undocumented immigrants, it's virtually impossible for the plaintiff, the homeowners association, the neighbor, or the parish to prove the case. So this is not really an enforcement provision. The enforcement will be initiated by the neighbors, by the homeowners association, or the parish attorney, but it will be impossible to prosecute the litigation, the civil litigation, if there is no way to identify who the occupants of the residence may be. And in the case of undocumented immigrants, it's impossible
30 seconds, sir.
for the plaintiffs to do that. So one way or the other, we need to get this. This is not, I don't think enforcement's the right word. This identification issue or this testament issue in this definition or in a separate thing, that's critical, because if we don't, we're exposing ourselves. And we just add this one thing. Social aid organizations assist illegal immigrants on where they can establish bunkhouse residences. They know that you can't do it in East Baton Rouge Parish if you have to have an affidavit of who the residents are. So they won't be directed to East Baton Rouge Parish, they'll be directed to our parish.
Time.
Thank you.
Comments or questions from commissioners? What's the wish of the commission?
I move that we adopt the ordinance without. Let's see. Without the other statements in it, without the enforcement, and then eliminating single before culinary in both instances within the ordinance as it is before us. That's my motion.
I have a motion by Mike Bardwell to adopt the definition without the enforcement language and removing the word single in front of culinary facilities.
At both locations.
In both locations of the definition. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Julio Dumas. Is there any objections or discussions? Motion passes. All right, moving along. Item 8, public hearing to consider a contract agreement. 8A, Oak Lane Memorial Park.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Loop. I'm with T. Baker Smith, Prairieville. I'm an engineer, and I'm representing the developers, Oak Lane Memorial Park Incorporated. We have a PowerPoint presentation for you, and I realize that it's very late. I'm going to try to make it through here pretty quick. This is the existing site that you see on the screen. The Phillips property is what we're talking about. I'll start out by saying that we intend to keep the existing house intact with some remodeling and use it as a sales office. Let's see, flip on. This is the existing topo and boundary survey. As you can see, there are a number, approximately 100 existing live oak trees on the site, all of which we intend to keep, with the exception of one that's in bad shape that we've routed a roadway through. The property is on the corner of Highway 73 and Duplessis Road, the northeast corner. This is the proposed development plan. You can see by the illustration that we're planning on planting a number of additional trees, some of which will be live oaks. Let's see, we've got plans for a 2.1 acre detention pond, which is well oversized for the drainage needs. I prepared the calculations for the drainage and submitted to CSRS, and they have signed off and approved and agreed that it is more than adequate to offset the minor impact that is associated with this development. Let me just add that those calculations and our plan account for greater than 75% of the property remaining as grass covered. This is a pre-development drainage layout. It shows the existing drainage patterns. The entire property drains to the south. There's an existing outfall structure approximately midway through the south property line, which we intend to keep in place with minor modifications to make the detention pond work correctly. This is the post-development drainage layout showing the 2.1 acre detention pond, the proposed roads, buildings, and drainage patterns, which will be very similar to what is in existence today. There is one ditch and swale that's being added along the eastern property line where we abut Seven Oaks subdivision. We want to allow for the off-site drainage that is coming from their subdivision on our site and let it continue to be routed into our detention pond. And I'll add here that the roadway construction, in general, the concept is that the roads will be cut into the existing ground. I would say probably 85–90% of the roads, that won't be a problem. There are some areas in which the fill from the pond will have to be used to keep it from becoming a bowl, a bird bath, whatever you want to call it, so that it would maintain positive drainage and allow all of the site to continue to be drained to the south. Example projects, the developers have been associated with a cemetery project in Texas, Roselawn Cemetery. This is the entranceway. What we're trying to illustrate here is the caliber of the development. In the entrance, we plan to use the same quality materials. And let's see, we've got here a lakeside chapel. This is just an architectural example of what we plan for right there on the lakefront for funeral services and ceremonies. And we've got an additional lakeside chapel here. And that's the end of the presentation. Let's see. Facts and figures, we've got approximately 7,000 linear feet of roadway. We are maintaining approximately 80 plus percentage of the property as permeable. And this will provide approximately 30,000 burial spaces. Any questions?
Any comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, what's the right-of-way on 73?
You know, it's a servitude on both 73 and Duplessis Road. The property line actually goes to the center. Now, I do know that 73 is being looked at by the Highway Department. They've got a plan widening of the highway there. And I would imagine that during that process they'd be acquiring that right away, but that's just a guess.
There was, or there has been some talk, and I'm assuming this conversation is pertaining to the cremation gardens. There will be no on-site crematorium, correct? There will be one? There won't be. Okay. Don't shake your head the wrong way right now, George. I'm not.
There will not be a crematorium on the site.
Okay, I just want to get that out right off the bat, because there was some, and I was assuming it was brought up because of the cremation gardens, and so that's.
To answer Mr. Grant's question, 73 has an 80-foot servitude of right-of-way, and Duplessis Road a 60-foot servitude.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, the tract of the land that says reserved for alternate use. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, at one point we were looking at that as being a potential site for funeral home type deal. At this point, that's been removed from the plan. That's certainly not in the plan. It's not in the contract. And it's strictly, you know, anything that we would do with that parcel, that outset parcel, would have to come before the Planning Commission to get approval to be rezoned, especially if there's going to be a funeral home facility that would be run under commercial classification and have to be rezoned.
Isn't there a large swale ditch that runs along Duplessis Road as it hits 73 there? Isn't there a big drainage pattern? What's going to happen there with that? How will that be worked into your pond or your drainage? Or?
Oh, there's a large ditch there, not a swale. Along the south side of the property on Duplessis Road, yeah. That's the start of the Grand Goudin. And
it will remain intact the way it is?
Oh, yeah, we're not touching anything outside of our property limits.
I just didn't know how your property the flow would affect impact, or have you looked at that, or it won't have any impact?
It will not have any impact. Any drainage impact would be a negative impact. Our pond is sized excessively.
Okay.
Our increase in runoff is 4 CFS. For a 25-year storm, we went ahead and looked over and above just because we had allowed for storage volume that was in excess of what was needed to offset the impact. And we've got a letter here signed by CSRS that says that they reviewed the drainage calculations. And
all right, and it seems like also that along Duplessis Road, I know when the fair goes on, I thought St. John was donated that piece of property by Dr. Phillips, but maybe it's just a usage kind of thing. I'm not certain, but I'm sure you guys have done your homework.
Some agreement worked out to allow for that, but no, it hadn't been donated to St. John, and I don't know what they'll do. I was at the fair this year, and that did cross my mind.
It's a lot of people. And you guys are working with an arborist to keep these trees viable.
Absolutely. We're going to be coordinating closely with him to feed the trees before we start construction, during construction, and after construction, to do everything that we can to save every one of them. the trees are one of the things that make this site so perfect for what we're trying to do.
Well, this site is made by the trees, period, throughout the parish. This is the pinnacle site in the parish, so trees are of utmost importance to me, and I know a lot of other people, especially the Seven Oaks people that live right there, that, you know, Dr. Phillips created that piece of property. The trees are what makes it, so.
Right.
But at the same time, if it falls out that they cannot save a tree, George, you hold the purse strings on this. You have told me in a telephone conversation we had, you want to save every one of the trees that you can. You are looking at planting more trees. So I think this is an issue where we do have a developer who is conscientious, and I think he needs to be commended for that.
Absolutely.
And we need to work with him as much as possible on that type of stuff.
Absolutely. I gave George my assurance that I'd be willing to do that and help him out as much as possible, especially considering that we don't have a landscape ordinance in this parish, and this bolsters my argument that we should be looking at a landscape ordinance in this parish.
Well, in an unrelated matter, over at Commerce Center, Mr. Bonfanni also said he was going to save the trees, and I kind of wondered, starting in March, I saw 3 of them come down around the old homestead, and I wondered about those trees, what happened to them?
If you recall, at the time that we had this discussion about the trees, I had consulted an arborist, and he told me that the only trees there that should be saved were the live oak trees, basically around the house, but there were several other live oaks on other parts of the site. He also told me that those live oak trees were too close together and they should be thinned out. The ones that were in a location where we were going to have to change the level of the ground would not have survived, and those were the ones that came down. Those are the only live oaks that came down.
I noticed starting in April, 3 of them around the home came down, and I wondered if they were diseased or termites. I wondered what had happened to them.
Water oak trees.
That was it. They were basically in the wrong elevation.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions by commissioners? Then at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come up and speak on this item, please come up, sign in with the secretary, and you will get your 3 minutes to speak. June, who do we have first?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Stanley Phillips, and I'm one of the heirs to the estate here. And I'm here to talk to y'all and ask y'all, before y'all consider this project agreement, we are going in front of Judge Turo on the 28th of May to do away with some of the issues. And this agreement is one of the issues. And we're just asking y'all to hold up until after the 28th of this month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bill Smith. I am a homeowner in Seven Oaks. I guess I'm the only one that was able to last this long. But I was one of the first families. My family was one of the first families in Seven Oaks, and our property does butt up against Dr. Phillips' property. And I'm not here tonight because I'm for or against this project one way or another. We really didn't find out about it till last Thursday, so I'm here because I don't know some things. And I kind of wanted to go over those with you tonight. I don't know what effect this cemetery is going to have on our property values. Just don't have any idea at this point. And a lot of that, of course, would have to do with how well the project was done. I don't know what effect this will have on the drainage. I know they talked about that in their presentation, but I also know, since I was there early on with Seven Oaks, that the ponds we had in the subdivision, they had a lot of problems early on. And if y'all remember, you probably do, a lot of the dirt washed into those ponds, and they kept filling in. So I don't know what the long-term effect would be if they don't do a good job on the ponds, or the pond that they're proposing. I also, Mr. Bonfanti was nice enough to talk to me and my wife about this tonight, but I don't know how well this project's going to be done. He talked about a fence that's going to be between our property and the cemetery. I would love for him to elaborate with y'all on that before you make a decision. And I really don't know what happens to an area that's dense with single-family homes when you put a cemetery in it. So anyway, that's what I don't know, and I hope that you can find some of these things out before you make a decision one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's it, June.
On the first comment about the purchase of the property, we request that you guys do sign off on the contract tonight, and if the purchase of property doesn't go through, the contract will be null and void at that time. On the issue of the drainage, pond will have 5-to-1 slopes. That's in the storage area, 2 foot that are from the normal water surface to the peak water surface. 5-to-1 slope is plenty to keep it from eroding, but from there down into the underwater part of the pond, there's going to be 3-to-1 slope with shotcrete, which is sprayed concrete, which is going to keep things in place. Again, let me say the pond is well in excess of what's needed to offset the impact. The fence that's going to border our development from Seven Oaks, we're allowing for a 20-foot landscape buffer in that area, which is going to be trees and shrubs. In addition, there will be a fence that will allow for the growth of additional vegetation and keep small animals and children out of the property.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of comments. First off, I signed the contract. And I don't sign the contract until everyone else has signed the contract. So if there is an issue and this deal falls through and not all this, and those signatures are not on the contract, I don't sign the contract. So it goes through. That issue's taken care of. I do understand concerns with the Seven Oaks residents, but I want the Seven Oaks residents to understand the concerns of Mr. Bonfanti. Kids playing in the backyard, somebody having a party, and you have a funeral service going on. Someone's died. So maybe there needs to be a little more communication there. I don't think Mr. Bonfanti is going to do anything that's in very poor taste. At the same time, while the residents of Seven Oaks may feel like he is encroaching on them, they could be encroaching on him. You're looking at, you're giving me that face, but at the same time, it's a kind of a mutual thing. Just what I was saying before. Kids playing in the backyard, a party going on, disrupting a funeral service. That is an encroachment of sorts. I guess it would be a situation where this particular piece of property, I don't know if we're ever going to find anybody that's going to be totally happy with whatever goes there. But something is going to go there. And I can think of far worse uses for it. So I'm going to leave it at that. Comments, questions from commissioners?
O'Neill.
Sir.
Anything that we do tonight, legal and binding from a financial deal with a purchaser and a purchasing?
I mean, our contract is with...
I'm worried about that comment I heard a while ago.
I understand that, but our contract will be with Oak Lane Memorial Park Inc. If they don't own the property, there's no contract.
Okay.
So if whatever occurs there will not affect us, because we'll have a contract with that corporation. If they can't... if they don't own the property, they're obviously not going to have a contract for traffic and drainage. So no, I don't think it's a problem Alternatively, I do feel that if this wanted to be stopped, we should have got some kind of injunction. We didn't get an injunction. I would not recommend that you delay acting under these circumstances, under those circumstances. Sometimes I do, but in this particular case, we didn't get an injunction, and we're not binding the parish to do anything except getting to a contract for drainage and infrastructure improvements if this thing's built. So I don't have any problem with it.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? What's the wish of the commission?
I move that we approve.
Have a motion to approve by Mike Bardwell.
A second.
Second by Don Grant. Is there any opposition or discussion? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 9, new business. Any items of new business? Item 10, old business. There are no items of old business unless staff got anything. No, I don't see anything either. Item 11, subcommittee report. Mike?
Still working on several items in subcommittee. A few things will probably be coming within the next month or two. Biggest thing, we have a workshop meeting scheduled on our zoning night this month. So I'm gonna have to get with the rest of the commissioners and see when y'all can meet for a subcommittee meeting, and then I'll get with Ms. June, communicate via email.
That's it?
That's all I got.
Item 12, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion by Scott Courtwright to adjourn, seconded by Paige Becknell. Is there any opposition or discussion? Motion passes.
I don't think wrong with y'all just